Alright, it's freaking hot.
Be careful.
This is my Indian motorcycle, but unfortunately it has a bent frame, which makes it a total motorcycle. But I reached out to these experts in hopes of them being able to fix this issue for me over a month ago, and I traveled hundreds of miles for their help. But I would soon find out if all the money that I spent on this would prove helpful in getting this motorcycle back on the road. Currently we are headed to GMD CompuTrack to pick up the Super Chief Limited. Right now I'm dealing with traffic because what is Atlanta without traffic?
I wasn't expecting to see it back home until at least 7.
7?
Yep.
3.5 hours late. Oh, I stalled the truck. Whoops. Time to go pay and see what all they did to the bike. You remember?
You got your bike.
Okay. $1,725, $52. David's going back to get the bike, try to give us some information on what all they did.
I'll tell you, man, I got that stuff taped up in such a way that we can. Ooh, ow! That hurt. You gotta be really careful when you put it back in. That's why I got it taped up like this. You're gonna have to line them up. What I would do, I would run a string through here and then just slowly pull everything through like this.
Okay.
And then just as it gets to the entry, take the tape off.
Okay.
As it rolls through. But you gotta be real careful because it's a tight fit. This wire does not go through the bundle.
Okay.
All right.
Sweet. You guys did a good job on the paint job. You guys heated up. Well, let me pay first because I'm doing it, kind of documenting everything with it. I would love to get some information because a lot of people just simply don't know how this stuff works or everything that's involved.
All right, so that's your total right there.
All right.
Lean back wheel, swing arm pivot is 0.2 degrees. Front to the back wheel is 1.2 degrees, which is that was the main issue right there. And then so that would wheelbase 160 or 1611.5, and we called Indian on it. We didn't have any measurements of good ones in the system, so we called Indian on it, and I think they said it was 130, 140, something like that, or so it should have been 1,630-ish. So we ended up having to do a pull out on it.
Okay.
Can't have the heat in through here. Right here is to relieve this gusset here, and then I think down in this tube here because that lean that I was saying from the front to the back wheel.
Yeah.
At 1.2 degrees. This is kind of it's an exaggerated drawing of it, but with the pointer going through the center of the frame, center of the neck, it was pointed at about 5 millimeters top to the left, and
it's kind of like
36 millimeters. So your front tire was like this.
Oh,
wow! It's kind of exaggerated, but
yeah.
So, but that's what it would cause a lot of handling issues once you go to get it put back together and start riding.
Okay. So for the people that don't know what you guys do, how did you get those measurements? Could you show us?
This is the GMD CompuTrack system. So he puts the bike in front of there, he puts targets all throughout the bike, and then he shoots it left to right, right to left, and then it gives him it's a 3D coordinate system. The lean angle, geometry, this wheelbase, it gives him everything he needs to. And then if there is issues, either with the front end, the rear wheel alignment, the frame itself, we can adjust each one of those things to make it straight.
And so the bike was in that thing. So for it to be in there, you have to take off with the exhaust and.
On yours, on almost all the bikes, you have to take off the exhaust. Like on something with a sport bike like that, you have to take the sump pan off, just because it hits the bottom of the jig.
Okay.
On yours, we didn't have to. And even like with your bike, we could have, since it's a whole loop frame, that one could have been without the motor in it. But most of the bikes, like sport bikes, the motor has to be in it to be able to adjust the frame.
That's why I'm kind of documenting it, because a lot of people just don't know. Because this is, I guess, the worst thing that could happen to a frame other than it being completely snapped in half.
Most of the time, the insurance companies don't total it and not let anybody ride it. Or you have to replace it, or they say you have to replace the frame.
Well, let me ask you this.
That's what we.
Does this have to only be wreck bikes? Can it be like a used bike? Can it be a new bike or what?
Brand new bikes. We've got, actually, there's an Aprilia, I think it's sitting outside. It's brand new, 2023. It's from Washington State right now because the guy had handling issues. He took it back to the dealer several times. They couldn't figure out what was going on with it, so the guy had it shipped down here.
From Washington State?
From Washington State. And put it in front of CompuTrack. The frame is actually straight, but the rear wheel alignment, the adjusters on the rear wheel for the chain adjusters, they were not there. There's several marks on there, but none of them weren't lined up correctly. He had lined them up, say line 3, line 3, but it was still, pulling to the left when you drive down the road. Well, we adjusted the chain by string alignment and found out that the marks aren't telling the truth, basically.
Interesting. So it goes to show you can have a brand new bike and it still could need some type of alignment. So you got people from Washington State shipping bikes down here, the GMD CompuTrack Atlanta. So I brought my bike here because I knew that they were the best to do it, and the frame is better than brand new. So if you need a new frame corrected, this is probably where you want to bring it to. So now let's get the bike back on the truck and try to make it back on.
I worked on motorcycles for years, and until I started working here, I didn't know. I mean, I would have never. People said, "Oh, you need to do alignment on it." I'm like, it doesn't have 4 wheels. That's I always thought it was a 4-wheel thing. Box for you.
Came mostly prepared.
Yeah.
I figured this was awesome. Okay. All right, it's freaking hot. Okay.
Yes.
I don't think nothing's going anywhere. This stuff might fly up, but it's all good. Hopefully we don't run into any rain because the boots, the spark plugs are open, but I think we'll be all right. I might need your help.
Okay.
This is because not having the handlebars. Let's see what
Be careful.
Yes. I big strong man.
Kind of late, ain't it? So they kind of late, ain't it?
All right. That's good enough for today. And it hit my knee, and I'm tired. 6 hours, 7 hours driving. I think I'm good. I've had the bike in the garage for a couple of days, and it's given me some time to understand some of the measurements and what they've done to fix the bike. My original job was to get the front end of the bike to a rolling chassis, so that means getting the front wheel, forks, upper and lower steering on so they could roll the bike in and get accurate measurements from the front axle to the rear axle, swing arm to the rear, swing arm to the front. We needed accurate measurements, but we knew that the frame was bent from, I guess, the middle portion of the neck to the steering head, which makes it veer more towards the left. Where this got more expensive is I tried to get parts off the bike that they would have had to take off so I wouldn't get charged labor. But what I didn't think about was the exhaust. So the exhaust on the Indian Chief covers up the swing arm pivot bolt, which is where the swing arm meets the frame. And because of that, they had to remove the exhaust so they can get an accurate measurement, which I was charged labor for. The next part of this, which I really did not think about, was the wiring harness. So when they put the bike in the frame jig, what they do is they heat the frame up because metal is more malleable. It is able to move more and bend more when it's heated up because it expands. and they are able to bend the frame easier. The wiring harness on the Indian Chief is routed through the frame, which means that once they heated the frame up, it would have melted the wiring harness, and that would have been, oh my Jesus, that would have been really bad. So they removed the wiring harness, and overall I was charged around 3 to 4 hours of labor at $95. Let's just say $300 to $400. Not the end of the world, but it was just something that I just did not think about. But I got the bike there. I estimated that it would take about a month, and it took them about a month and 5 days to get the measurements and to bend the frame back to where it needed to be. I am not in a position to digest all of these specific measurements, but essentially I paid attention to 3 major ones. That was the rake, the trail, and the wheelbase. So there are plenty of videos out there to kind of explain in detail what the rake, trail, and the wheelbase are, but essentially the rake is a degree of how far the front wheel sticks out from the steering head. On the Indian Chief, not a Sport Chief because they are different, the stock rake is 29 degrees. What my Indian Chief measured at was 27.6 degrees. So that means it was off by 1.4 degrees. And from the accident, the bike it took a front end impact. So the front wheel was pushed more in towards the steering head. And what the rake is, the further the rake out, the less responsive your handling is gonna be. So being that it was pushed in, it meant that I was gonna have a more responsive handling, but that was at the expense of the bike turning in more to the left. It's probably gonna fight you when you turn to the right. It's gonna pull more to the left because the neck is pushed to the left. It's gonna chew up the tires more because the alignment is off. Sport Chief, for instance, it has a more responsive handling. It is at 28 degrees. Indian Chieftain, for instance, you might think it's gonna have a higher rake because it's a bagger, right? No, it's actually 25 degrees along with the Indian Challenger. This is why they feel so nimble even though they're so big, but it really depends on the engineering of the motorcycle, the wants that they're trying to get out of the design in the motorcycle, the wheelbase, trail, all these things matter to determine what these rakes are and the handling characteristics they're trying to get from the motorcycle. The trail, for instance, is gonna take the same essential measurements of the rake, but is the inverse, and you get more of an inch or a millimeter measurement. So in the case of Indian Chief, the stock trail is 132 millimeters. It measured at 126.2 millimeters. So the trail was off by 5.8 millimeters, which again, it was pushed more in towards the steering head, which would have gave it more responsive handling, but at the expense of it pulling to one side, the handling being just ridiculously off, it fighting you one side and it pulling down the highway one side, right? So the wheelbase is the measurement between the rear axle and the front axle. A stock Indian Chief is gonna measure at 1,626 millimeters. Mine measured at 1611.5, meaning it was off by 14.5 millimeters. That means the wheelbase was shortened by 14.5 millimeters, again, because that steering head was twisted to the left. A Sport Chief's dimensions, its wheelbase is 1,640 millimeters compared to 1,626 millimeters on an Indian Chief. So the Sport Chief has a longer wheelbase. It also has one less degree of rake, and also the trail on Indian Chief is 132 millimeters, and on Sport Chief, it is 111 millimeters. In grand total, it came out to $1,725. But when you compare that to a brand new Indian Chief frame of $3,000, and at this current time, you cannot get one, you can't beat it in this case. So I saved, let's say you add U-Haul and gas and time, like let's say $2,000. I still saved $1,000 by getting this frame repaired, and also the experience of going through this frame repair process and knowing what to expect next time. So the people at GMD CompuTrack, again, the people send their motorcycles there because of that software, those measurements that they take, and the process that they use to bend things back to where it needs to be and make it stock, if not better. So now that this bike is complete, I can move on knowing that the frame is where it needs to be, and I can, continue to build this bike. So I hope you learned something. I would 100% do this again, not even think about it. And a month turnaround is honestly not bad at all. But $1,700 is a big pill to swallow. But in the case of the grand scheme of things, $3,000, having to take everything off of that frame just to, swap it and still have to wait and try to go through the hoops of getting a new frame, it's a no-brainer to just simply get the frame repaired. And I could have still bought a new frame and it's still not been in alignment based off of what I've learned now. So Stay tuned for the rest that comes with that bike. We still got to get the Harley rebuilt in that bike, but you can click this playlist and follow along and catch up on that. And as always, thanks for listening to my story. And if you're subscribed, which I hope you are, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.